Hi, I'm David Marsh, and welcome to Exploring the Human Journey.
Exploring the Human Journey.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. I am so glad you get to hear this exciting interview today. We've got Amber Pechin with us today. Recently, I spent some time with her, and I also spent some time with Susan from HR. She is the head of HR of Amplitude Media, and I want you to watch this video. But I do want to warn you that in this video, there is a nudity scene. Someone in this video is fully nude in the bathtub. Enjoy this video.
I was raised in a Mormon home, so I was raised LDS. My parents are very strong, believing Mormons. We had a great home life, actually. I'm really grateful that I was raised in the family I was raised in. We're still very close to this day. And I remained Mormon until I was 32. It's coming up on 7 years, actually, my anniversary of leaving the church, which feels like a whole different life now. It feels like a different life. So I did all the things good Mormons do. I got married at 19, had my first baby at 20. It doesn't mean anything if you're not Mormon, but if you're Mormon, you're like, okay, married in the temple. He's a returned missionary. You go to church every week. You have 4 kids. Like, it's just, you're checking off the list. I believed very, very strongly in the church. I believed very strongly in God and all of the things I was supposed to believe. Mormons get what's called a patriarchal blessing when they're a teenager. And he laid his hands on my head and he told me that I was to endure to the end, which is the Mormon way of saying your life's going to suck. Suck it up. I think it says it 9 times in my blessing that I will need to endure to the end. And my blessing is a 1.5-page type, so it's not very long. And I left his house feeling devastated. My life was going to be horrible and I didn't know why. But it was my job to make sure it was that I just endured. So then the first guy that came along that was interested, who was worthy and marked all the check boxes, we got married. Met and were engaged and married within like 7 months. I think the biggest change was learning that I could choose things for my own happiness versus choosing to endure. Leaving the church was like one of my most freeing things in parenting, actually. I loved being a mom as a Mormon, but I was terrified because they could mess up. I did a comedy bit about that where I have like the list of ways you can rebel as a Mormon teenager. When it is literally like, have a bad attitude about reading scriptures, don't pray enough, go to church and wear shorts that are 1 inch above the knee rather than 1 inch below the knee. Like, the list is like, I came up with like 100 reasons, 100 different things. And there's like lists of ways to rebel as a non-Mormon kid. And it's like, become a Mormon. And that's literally, and if my kids wanted to be Mormon, I would let them. We'd have a lot of conversations about it. I'm single, have 4 teenage girls, so they're 12, 13, 15, and 18. It's like living in a sorority house with my best friends. It's really fun. I left because of the injustice in the LGBTQ community. I didn't realize that I was also being kept down through the misogyny and the patriarchy. I didn't realize that sexism existed until after I left. I am no longer religious at all. I believe in humans. I believe in our ability to do good things for each other and selflessly for each other. Our ability as humans to be kind, loving, God-like creatures is innate within us.
Awesome. Amber, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was great. So you've been in this paradigm, this religious construct, since you grew up. And I got to hear a little bit about that when we shot your video. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on in that. You said you liked having that, growing up in that family structure. Tell me about how that was.
I think you always like it because you don't know any different, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't a bad childhood.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad family. My family's fantastic. And the parts of Mormonism that we lived and breathed it. It was all of my life, right? It was everything we did, but a lot of it was family centric and family focused. So we spent a lot of time together.
That really helped me reframe, because a lot of times I'm going through this, like, oh, I feel like somebody told me something that wasn't true and I'm mad about it. And, I don't want to put people that I grew up with in my past in a negative light. I want to give gratitude for their contribution. Maybe I don't stay in the same paradigm, but I still want to look back and say, I have gratitude for that time.
Well, and I'm inherently in my life, I'm a storyteller. That's kind of the constant theme that I've always had. And I think the power of the stories that we tell is important. Perhaps more powerful than stories we tell other people is stories we tell ourselves. It took me a while to be able to hold the two parts of Mormonism as the same, and see the beauty in it as well as I was angry for a long time. But I have enough distance from it now.
Yeah.
Distance helps a lot of things.
You said 7 years. I mean, that's, I deconstructed from a religious paradigm about 3 years ago. So I'm still in that mad phase occasionally. And then I get into the happy phase and I get into the mess. So vacillates.
And it does. And I still, it's so much less now than it used to be.
That's good.
It used to color everything.
Yeah.
And now it's almost a nostalgic memory. It's kind of like when you're in college and you're like, remember how dorky I was in 7th grade? And you can look back and laugh and know that was a painful time, actually, that, 7th grade is kind of the worst.
It's absolutely the worst.
And I'm pretty sure it's one of, it's for certain hell in some religions somewhere is 7th grade. Yeah. Probably gym class in the locker room. So
we have to shower together, like nude? Can we wear our clothes? No. Yeah.
Yeah, girls just didn't shower. But still, it's like, I can look back and I can remember there were painful experiences and painful things that happened, but I grew from them and I learned. And I think that a lot of times it's still, there's moments, for sure. There's moments and it colors your entire life. Yeah. But I've been grateful for the gifts that were the positives, and I can accept people for how they are. Yeah. So
no, you made a real good point there. You said we tell ourselves a story. So there's an event that happened. Well, what's the story that we've told ourselves about that event? Maybe that event was something that you didn't want to have happen, so that's a bad event. Nonetheless, it's an event. How you respond to it is totally different than how you react to it.
Right, and it's actually that's a psychological thing. You reframe. So you can take a story, you say this bad thing happened to me, and you can say, okay, this is a bad thing, but here are the positive things that I learned and grew from and the place that I went from. And it's not to dismiss that it wasn't painful. It's not to dismiss that it didn't happen, or to make it so it's less important or less painful or any of those things. But it's like when you are the victor, when you are the hero of your story rather than the victim, it changes the importance and the weight. And I think that takes time. Yeah. It's not something you can immediately do. Yeah. It takes time and space and distance, but
that's really good. You take that victim and you turn it into a victor. Yeah, you turn yourself into that. I like that. That's a really good way to reframe. It's like you've done that internal work. You've done work.
I've done a lot of work. Yeah. And I still so much more work to do. I'm still so emotionally damaged. But we all are. Yeah. From different things. And I had a conversation one time with a friend of my brother-in-law's, a good friend of their family's, and it was probably 2 years after I left the church. And he grew up very not religious, had lived his life completely differently than I grew up very straight arrow and very good, and had very few experiences that were outside of the proper experiences to have.
You had to be righteous.
Right. Yeah. And I was at Thanksgiving at my sister's house, who had also left the church at that time. And we were lamenting all of the experiences we hadn't gotten to have. And he made a really good point. And he said, but think of all the experiences you didn't have that were negative. Yeah. He's like, you didn't get pregnant at 17. Yeah. You never got in an accident for drunk driving. You never were, beaten by a boyfriend because you weren't allowed to have boyfriends. All of these things. And it's like life hands you what it hands you, and your job is to deal with it. Yeah. And there are worse experiences that I could have been handed. Yeah.
That is awesome. I grew up in a religious paradigm that was a Christian-based paradigm. As the Mormons, you were given a paradigm that Jesus spoke years ago, but then he came back and spoke again to Joseph Smith, and here's some new information, some more progressive thought. But the same paradigm that you grew up with, that I grew up with, was you're not worthy. you're not good enough. Somebody somewhere needs to do something for you so that you could go to the good place and you didn't have to go to the bad place.
Well, and this is probably one of the key differences in our different religious upbringings, is that somebody had to do something for you. But Mormonism is very works based. You have to work as hard as you can, and grace makes up the difference.
So you're earning your salvation.
Always.
Wow.
And you can never work hard enough.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, there is always more you can do. Always.
How many hours did you sleep? Oh, you slept 4 hours? Well, you should have slept 3 hours, because then you could have done more. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But then if you sleep 3 hours, well, you're really not taking care of your body. God gave you this body.
You didn't do good enough.
There's always, it's a paradigm, it's a paradox. And so it's kind of the ideal story about it too. So Mormons have framed the Adam and Eve story as God commanded them to multiply and replenish the earth. He also commanded them not to eat of the fruit of the tree. They couldn't do both commandments. Because in order to multiply and replenish, they had to eat of the fruit of the tree. So you start out, the entire world starts on this paradox where God's telling you to do two things that are in conflict with each other. And it's kind of the same way the entire religion works. Like, you can read your scriptures all day long, but then are you serving others? But then if you're serving others all day long, then are you praying enough? And if you're not praying enough, or you don't have a prayer in your heart all the time, then what about your family? And what about your kids? And what about your parents and your siblings? And they're like, it's exhausting. Yeah. It's probably, and then you're always worrying about, okay, all my actions are good, but my thoughts, are my thoughts good? Am I doing it with a good attitude? Do I have a song in my heart? Like, all of the things. Yeah. And it's constant religious anxiety. Yes. Constant religious anxiety. Yeah. Is that, and anxiety is a really good way to put it, where it's just like this. You can run and run and run and run, but you will never catch up with the finish line. If you don't have enough joy, you get more. I feel really anxious. Yeah, well, there you go. You should. And it's true. Like, am I good enough? Am I appearing good enough? Am I good enough? This? And you're always falling short. There's all of the cultural expectations too of how you should feel and how you should think and what you should want to do. So you should want to be a wife, and you should want to be a mother, and you should want to cheerfully teach your children to grow up and be good Mormons. So you shouldn't have any career aspirations or anything. And if you do, or it's this constant Plus, you're a female, and a woman's place is underneath the man, because it's that patriarchal society. Keep the woman down because they're subservient. And so then you not only do you get that spiritual narrative, you get that feminine is bad narrative. Right. But Mormons do it opposite, actually. Oh. So it's not, women are not bad. Well, I just remember the Adam and Eve paradigm, where Eve is the one that tricked Adam. She didn't. She was smart. Oh. She saw that there was a paradox and that they had to do one in order to do the other. And she knew that the greater commandment was to continue on so that the life could come. Because otherwise they would be stuck in that Garden of Eden for who knows how long. Yeah. And we don't know how long they were there to begin with before they made that decision, like all of these things that Mormons think. So women are actually held, it's called putting them on a pedestal in feminist narrative, but you're so good you could never leave. So you're too righteous and you're too worthy, and you don't need to be sullied by the business world. So you should stay home with the children. That's where your most important place is. You are too we don't want you to hear words you wouldn't want to hear. That sounds like a mind job, though. They're like trying to trick you into staying at home. Don't seek your own career. Oh, you're special. You're really important. Stay home and raise the kids. Well, and so women can't have the priesthood because men need the priesthood in order to grow and to learn. But women are just naturally better leaders. Are you kidding me? Yeah, it is like the ultimate gaslighting. That sounds like a man came up with those ideas. I know. Let's tell them that we're not as special as them, so they have to raise kids, and then we'll be their bosses. Right. Yeah. But to be fair, I'm not here to be fair. No, I get yelled at when I'm not fair a lot. A lot. You're a mom. You get it. You got to be fair. Everybody plays or nobody plays. I remember that. That is our rule. That's right. That is rule number 1. That's right. Rule number 2? Tell me. Be excellent to each other. Be excellent. That's right. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Yes, because you can let everybody play and still kind of be a dick about it. Yes. I love it. So those are our only 2 rules. And if we all do that in life, we'll have a better life. Show's over. Thanks for watching. All right. You're welcome. World peace. World peace. And begin. I'm sorry. So you're telling me that the paradigm that the man
is telling the woman that she should let him be in charge because she's better than him, is what you're saying.
Essentially, yeah. So women are just more pure and more righteous, but men have all of these other standards, things that keep them down too. So men are never good enough. There's all of these worthiness checks.
Susan's ready to go check out.
All right.
You're welcome to let her down. Okay. Let her go check things out. Go sniff around, see what's up.
She's gonna go smell, see what other dogs she
That's
can
right.
find.
She's got some HR work to do.
Yes, she's got to do some inspecting of the set. She's got to make sure that all of the OSHA rules have been
We're in
compliance. Yeah,
that's right.
And if not, she's going to fill out some paperwork.
I need you to sign a release form real quick, if that's okay.
She's also a notary, so it's okay.
She can sign it. Awesome.
Yeah, she just will paw print.
Nice.
Yeah, it's an important job.
So you're telling me that the men are really trying to make sure that they have their position of power. Women are put in a position where they're honored, but yet their role is to be a nurturer, which is nice to have a mom that's a nurturer. My mom was a nurturer. That's good. Women can have careers. They can be a nurturer at the same time.
And men can also be nurturers.
Absolutely. Because there's the polarity. You have masculine and feminine qualities. Everybody's got something that they're really good at. What I like is the paradigm of it's okay to be who you want to be. You told me you wanted to be a pre-med student and you were thinking, hey, I'm going to be a doctor. How'd that go?
Not well.
Yeah.
So, and my parents never discouraged me.
Yeah.
But my job was not to, that wasn't my job.
Yeah.
And so that was, in the opening, I talked about the patriarchal blessing a little bit.
Yeah, and I had to cut it off. Oh, it was so good. So give me some more, reframe that. Give me the longer version of that.
Yeah, so you get this blessing when you're 14, or when you're a teenager, that kind of like tells you about the rest of your life. It's fortune telling.
You're super excited. This is going to be the pinnacle of your childhood at this point.
Well, and it kind of is supposed to be for guidance and kind of all of these things. So I went in to get this blessing, and I was 17, so I was older than most.
Okay.
Just because I never felt worthy to get it before then.
That
whole thing. But then I was going to college, and so I went to get it, and I went with my mom, and this older gentleman was the one who gave me my blessing, and he's in his 70s or whatever, and he gives me this blessing to tell me about my future life, and like I said, he tells me, first of all, the tribe of the 10 tribes that I belong to, because we believe all the 10 tribes are still on the earth. We're mixed up. We don't know where they're at. And so this is how we know which tribe is your tribe, kind of a thing. And every tribe has a job. So my tribe is Ephraim, like most white Mormons. And our job is to be missionaries and to collect the other tribes. So, so I went in there and I found that out, and then I was told I was going to marry a young returned missionary in the temple. And that I was going to have children. And then it was literally telling me to endure to the end, and over and over and over again. And
the first time you hear that, you're like, okay. And the second time you hear it, you're like, okay, I guess. Third time you hear it, you're going, I'm seeing a pattern here. So my life's not going to be awesome, you're saying.
Right. And I'm like, so my life is going to suck. I'm 17, and I'm like, my life is going to be horrible. And I was set to go to college. I had a scholarship. I'm headed that direction in like 3 weeks at this point. And my mom's like, I left feeling depressed. And my mom, who had never said I couldn't go to school, she had never said, my mom has a college degree, my dad had a college degree, my grandmother insisted we all get college degrees, kind of a thing. My aspirations were too high. I should get a degree that I could do and still be a mom. And it was literally, she was like, see, you are going to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Your blessing.
She's validating your position.
Right. Yeah. And so she's like, and she was just so excited because she was worried I wasn't going to get married and have kids, I think, because of all of my career ambitions. I don't know. And I was like, I was crushed. I was like, I have all these dreams and aspirations for my life, and God has other plans, and they're going to be shitty.
Yeah.
Except you don't say shitty when you're Mormon, and I don't know if we say shitty on this
podcast.
I should have asked. Okay.
Yeah. But the whole paradigm is that there's somebody else that wants something for your life. So really, that free will that we're taught we have, it really isn't free will, because you have to do what God wants you to do. And if you don't do it, you're going to be miserable and you're going to miss the mark.
Yeah. And that's one of those other real struggles that I always struggled with was, so Mormons don't believe in predestination. So you're not predestined to do all of these things. However, because God knows everything, you're foreordained, which is a different word, which means the same thing.
It's the
So
same
God, there is a
context.
plan. We know what's going to happen
Yeah.
as long as you're righteous. But God already knows if you're righteous, which brings you back to the whole, like, why am I doing this all the way anyway if God already knows the choices I'm going to make? It's just like this whole kind of spiral that you're just not supposed to think too deeply about.
The Mormon paradigm, is it you're born, you pay bills, you die, and then you go to a reward or a punishment? Is that the paradigm?
So,
or were you here beforehand?
I had a 3.5-hour conversation with a guy to kind of look at my roof about this summer.
That lucky guy. He came to give you a bid and wanted to talk for a long time, I'm sure.
He started it, and at some point there were like charts on a whiteboard, like it was intense. I mean, he just kept asking questions, and I just kept answering. And
you roll the sleeves up.
Like,
all right, let's do this.
And so Mormons believe it's called the plan of salvation.
Did you pull out a flannel board by any chance?
So it's like you've met Mormons before.
I went to Sunday school. I get it.
Yeah, we had flannel boards we did for family evening as a kid, and all of the things. Yes.
Nice.
And no, but so you believe like there was the pre-earth life, and that's when there's a war in heaven where God's like, I want to send everybody to earth, but I want everybody to come back. And then Satan, he's the son of the morning, so the second spirit child born to God.
So I thought Jesus and Satan were brothers somewhere.
They are.
Okay,
they are.
yeah.
So God is the Father, Heavenly Father. There's a Heavenly Mother, but we don't talk about her because she's too sacred to talk about that whole cycle, right?
Wow.
And then this is why it's a 3-hour conversation, because all of these roads go like 1,000 directions.
Yeah.
But then, so then they had spirit babies together, Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother. Jesus was first, Lucifer was second. Lucifer / Satan / the devil. But they were both good at that time. But Satan's like, I have a plan. We'll send everybody to earth to get a body so they can get resurrected, because that's all very important to have the body. And then I'll get all the glory. And God was like, okay. And then Jesus was like, same plan, but you get all the glory. And then and then Heavenly Father, God was like, that's a better plan. I like that plan.
It's very egoic, isn't it? It's like, oh, well, I like your plan that I get the glory.
So it's not okay for Satan to want the glory, but it's great for God. I don't know.
Somehow he's the bad guy, but God's the good guy. Is that how it worked? Okay.
Right, essentially. And so then there was a war in heaven. And then a third of God's children, who were spirits, were sent down, like they wanted to follow Satan's plan. So they were sent to earth to tempt the rest of us when we came to earth. So then we all come down, get a body, our spirits and body become one. Earth is our test life. We don't remember the last life. Have your trial period on earth, then you hopefully live good enough. And if you are Mormon, you have to live and follow all of the rules. If you're not Mormon, you get a chance after you die to become Mormon.
Oh, well, there's hope still for me.
Yeah,
And I'm glad you're on the show to help proselytize me today.
So tonight we can get baptized.
That's right.
We just have to find a dude, because I can't do it.
Oh,
yeah. Funny. But then you die, and then you go to either spirit paradise or spirit prison. So if you were righteous, you go to spirit paradise. If you're wicked, you go to spirit prison. Or if you weren't Mormon, and that's where the spirit missionaries come to teach you, just like they do here. They come and teach you, which is always like, well, so I really shouldn't have learned about the church when I was on the earth, because I mean, in heaven, like it's like you have one set of missionaries coming to tell you what to do.
So now you're accountable for it, right? Because you knew better.
It's the worst.
Yeah. You're like, what the hell? I didn't know. Yeah. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Thanks so much. And then so you do that, and then you get sorted into your houses after Jesus comes back
like
again.
A physical abode, then.
No, I was just using a Harry Potter reference. So you go to one of.
I get it. Okay.
Sorry,
I get jokes.
Sorry. You have 3. So there's.
Because I was taught there's many mansions. You actually get a house when you get to heaven. So that's why I'm asking.
Mormons get a galaxy.
Oh.
So I know.
You get your own galaxy.
Yeah, you get your own planet, but it depends how many wives you have. That's a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you have celestial kingdom.
Though it's part of the story.
It is. You have celestial kingdom, terrestrial kingdom, and celestial kingdom, and then you have outer darkness. And so the super righteous go to the celestial kingdom, and then that's even tiered because we're very much multi-level marketing. Mm-hmm. And so the top level of heaven, like the very, very top level. So if you were righteous and male and married, and your wife was also righteous, that's when you become a god. Is if you get to that level. And then there's angels, and then something else below that. And then the terrestrial is like this earth. And so that's where people who are kind of okay go.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the telestial, which is like bad people go there.
Hmm.
Murderers and whoremongers.
Hmm.
That's like literal words that they say, whoremongers.
It's just nothing worse than having sex with a prostitute. The worst.
Actually, there is something
Ooh,
worse.
what's worse? Who tell me?
So if you go to outer darkness, you
Yeah?
become a son of perdition.
Hmm.
No daughters of perdition, so I'm okay. It means you rejected the Holy Ghost. So you knew about the church.
The worst. Yeah.
If I was a dude.
Yeah.
And so worse than like killing someone is like being a Mormon and then stop being Mormon.
Such mind control.
Yes, that's the word I want to use too. And
I'll say it for you then. Yeah, mind control.
I was going with the one you almost said and then didn't say.
Well, you know, mind
Okay.
fuck is what you were gonna go with. I gotcha. I get jokes.
I like that credibility you keep adding there. I get jokes. It's like, from your resume, it's like, hi, my name is David. I get jokes.
I get jokes.
But yeah, but then, so if you become a god, then you get a planet. But this is where it gets crazy, is that like Mormons believe in polygamy after this life. They no longer practice it now technically. But if you were a dude and you had,
They do if you're Warren Jeffs.
so he's not a real Mormon.
Oh, so they say he's different then. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow,
But he
okay.
follows more closely to Joseph Smith than anybody else did.
Uh-huh.
And then, but so say you were married and divorced, but you're married in the temple and then you got divorced and then you got married again and then that wife died and then you got married again. So you've had 3 different wives you've been sealed to in the temple. You get 3 planets if they're all righteous.
Now this sounds like a great deal for the dude. He gets multiple sex partners. He gets multiple wives throughout the time. He doesn't have to take care of the kids. He gets to go to his job or his work, and then the wives sort it all out.
But it's really just so much responsibility. Would you be able to? You would be able to handle that responsibility because you're a dude. As a woman, that's a lot of responsibility, and I wouldn't really want that.
Well, I'm just saying, it sounds like a dude came up with that idea.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too. Like the more I study about polygamy, and polygamy was one of the things that made me go, "Oh wow, I'm done. Like this is not okay." It was as much about controlling the men as it was about controlling the women, because most of the men were not polygamists. The powerful men were polygamists, and so and those powerful men got their pick of women because the women knew that in order to go to heaven, the more wives you had, the bigger your kingdom. So the many mansions, your mansions are larger, the more women you have to clean house and have babies. I don't know. But it's literally people have written dissertations about all of these different, every single thing I've said, there is like, it's the amount of information that's there is crazy.
Yep. So they've taken the Bible, they've added other stories to it, and you're not taught that this information is mythology, that we're here to learn lessons. You're taught this is the truth. Every word's literal.
It's literal.
Yeah.
So the Book of Mormon is the literal stories of the ancestors of the Native Americans. Literally.
Yeah. The guys on bicycles that show up with white shirts and ties, they knock on your door. They ask you if they want to spend some time. What do you do with those guys?
So I love humans, and I invite them in.
Yeah.
Every time.
Awesome.
They are 19, 18, 19, 20, or 21-year-old kids who are away from home, and if the worst thing I can do for them is show them how awesome ex-Mormons can be, that is my goal.
Yeah. Do you talk with them at all about where you are personally, or do you just go, hey, come in, do you want to have something to eat? And what do you do?
So I typically, what I do is I invite them in, I offer them something to drink and something to eat. And then I have a conversation, and I'm always very upfront. I'm very clear. And they generally know, actually, they already know what they're walking into. They know that that I used to be a member and I'm not anymore.
They know that because somebody somewhere gave them your address?
Yeah, Mormons track you forever.
What?
Yeah, so, and even though, so I...
you can run, but you can't hide.
You can't hide. So they have what's called your records.
Oh, boy.
And they have you connected to every family member that you have that's Mormon, or that you've ever mentioned, or that, I was at a friend's house when I was in high school and answered her phone. I was living there for a couple months, and it was somebody from the church calling to ask about somebody that I didn't know. So it was an older sibling of hers that no longer lived at home. And I was like, well, I'll take a message and I'll ask, but I'm just kind of a guest here for a little bit. So I asked her mom, and she's like, oh yeah, I don't know where he lives. And this is a good Mormon family. And I was shocked. I'm like, you don't know where your kid lives? As an adult, you don't know where your child is? And she's like, yeah, well, the church calls. They want to know where he's at, and he doesn't want us to tell him, so he won't tell us where he lives.
Oh.
And I'm like, you could say no.
You could just tell them no. That
Right.
doesn't occur, though.
It doesn't really occur.
Yeah.
Everybody makes their own decisions and choices. But like, I had a time shortly after I separated from my husband, he told me, he's like, the missionaries came by today looking for you by name. And we'd moved around so much in the last couple of years that we'd kind of gotten ahead of them and they didn't know where we were at. And I told them, and he had left the church by then too, but I was the more vocal, angry one. And
Go figure, right?
Right. And he was like, but they knew you by name. And he's like, and I told them that they didn't want to talk to you. He's like, they asked where you live now, and I didn't give them your address. They're trying to track you down. They're trying to find you, kind of a thing. And I was headed to a family reunion, and I knew that somebody in my family had told them where I was. And so I just came out and said it. I was like, so who told the missionaries where I lived? Who told the church where I would prefer that you didn't. We have some family people that I don't want to have access to where I live. I don't want them to know where my kids are residing. And I was like, if the church knows, they can find that out. And that's personal information I don't want them to have. So please don't share. And my mom's new husband, he's like, if the church calls and asks me, I'm going to tell them. I'm like, okay, I'm directly telling you not to.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't speak for God.
Oh.
Like,
so he's reframed that he's getting his information from a higher authority then.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely 100%. And they believe it. And I can't fault them for believing it. Like, they live their entire lives believing that other authority. And the funny thing is, one of my sisters, because I have 7, says to me during the same conversation.
Yeah, you're one of 9.
I'm one of 9, yeah. And she's like, who would give the missionaries your address? She's like, who would be that mean to the missionaries?
Oh.
And she said it, and I was like, we're joking about this now. This is good. This is progress. We're making jokes rather than like hiding and being terrified of Amber and her apostasy. So I saw that as a real turning point, actually. But because it was real rough for a while. Yeah. It was real rough.
Yeah, because not only are you going through your own deconstruction, but then you got family members that are very concerned for your eternal salvation. Right. So the last thing you want to do is have to go to the bad place for a long time, or whatever that paradigm is.
And it's not even the bad place. Like, it's not even me going to outer darkness that they're worried about. It's me not being in top spot number 1 with them. Oh. And that's
so it's almost a status thing or something? Or?
It's a status thing, but an importance thing, where it's framed as like love, but really it's control. So it's the phrase is families are forever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but you're only forever if you all get there together. If one of you doesn't, you're the one who just messed this up for everybody.
Oh, man. Such peer pressure then.
And so there's like this internal pressure to not fuck up. Mm-hmm. And then, but then at the same time, there's another phrase, like no empty chairs in heaven, right? But then, so all of Mormon stuff, though, like it makes sense on the surface.
Man, it's about stay in the tribe, because it's all about the tribe. and that's a good community to grow up as a young person. You're like, right. I'm important, I'm special, I'm in a tribe. But then you get older and you go, wait a minute, we're all in the same tribe.
And you never get to grow.
Yeah.
And you don't get, and part of growth is being able to like go out and experience and then come back, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, or go make your own way, and then, but so you never become an adult.
Yeah, that's the hero's journey Joseph Campbell talks about. Yes. Going out, finding the thing, slaying the dragon, getting through the woods of darkness, and then coming back with the newfound knowledge to enrich your community. Yeah,
exactly. And ex-Mormons tell that story really well.
Yeah.
Ex-Mormons tell the hero's journey really well.
Yeah.
I left the tribe and I grew and this whole thing is my hero's journey.
Yeah.
I've reframed it. I've my own hero of
I
my
went out,
journey.
I discovered fire. I'm bringing it back to you guys. The fire is good.
It's the Plato's allegory of the cave, right?
Where you're the
like
shadow people.
Yeah, and you're like, guys, there's beautiful things
Turn
out
around.
here.
Yeah.
Come outside. I'm freeing you. And they don't want to see
No.
it. They don't. Well, and some do though.
Yeah.
So three of my sisters have left the church now.
Mm-hmm.
I was the first, and then three of my sisters left within the next couple of years after me. Some of my ex-husband's family, my ex-husband, all my kids. Like, so it's the people that do listen.
Yeah. You know, what helped me is I framed that in, what I believe is a belief system. So it doesn't have to be absolute truth and it's heaven or hell and conscious eternal torment, because as a Christian, we don't get the luxury of outer darkness. It's conscious eternal torment forever. And after you've gone through 100 million billion years, you still keep going. You're like, and it's an awful paradigm to live in that. I'm like, who came up with this idea? This is what kind of a divine being would do this to someone? That makes God way worse than Hitler. I mean, people had a life that then it was over. This one keeps going and going.
Well, and that's where it's like, that was one of my things where I'm like, so we know all of this knowledge supposedly in advance. And then we come here and it's all wiped from our memory. So we're going blind for what we're supposed to do and the choices we're going to make that then decide the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't imagine. And when Mormons picture God as a loving father.
Yeah.
And as a parent, like
what parent would do that?
Right. Like, even if you get really mad at your kid and you ground them for like a year, you never follow through on it because it's torment for you, first of all. But second of all, because it's just the crime could never be great enough.
Yeah.
There's no crime. Even Hitler. And this is where I'm like, this is one of my things where what I came down to where I was like, I want some people to suffer for eternity because I'm human.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Like and I think we all think that. And Hitler is, the whatever he goes
poster
to.
child, sure.
Yeah, he's the poster
eternal
child.
Suffering.
Right,
sure,
even though there are people who are way worse than Hitler.
Yeah.
But you're like, these people have caused so much pain, they should be in pain too. But when I step back, I'm like, okay, but if you think about it, Hitler had a really shitty childhood. Mm-hmm. And what are the things that formed who he was and why he did the things he did that he didn't have control over? And then the people before him and like as a conscious being, we can say like there are things that cause things in people's lives that form who they are that they don't have power and control over. And if we meet it with love rather than anger, what are some choices we can make to help them grow and be in different ways? And
that's good.
Even if you want to punish them in the afterlife, if you believe that's a thing, eternity feels like a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you put it in this human lifespan, it's 100 years or less, or generally. And
even if you said like, okay, so we're going to make Hitler suffer 1,000,000 years for every life he caused to be lost.
Yeah.
There's still eternity after that.
At some point, it's complete.
Right. At some point, you have to be done.
Yeah.
And it has to finish and end. Yeah. And it's incomprehensible to think that there's something that somebody could do without information.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't have the information to make a good choice about it.
Right. And then the human experience forms us in different ways. So, and all of that being said, like there are people in my life who've caused some great pain to people I love that I would love to see tormented for eternity.
Sure.
That's how I know I'm not a god.
Yeah.
Or maybe I am.
Or am I?
Or am I? I don't know. So,
one thing that really helped me coming out of that paradigm is someone who I love dearly, was a dear friend of mine, was a great person in business and a great personal friend of mine. And he was a gay man. And I'm like, how could this guy that's so cool, he's a good person, he's a nice person, and he's a gay man, you're telling me that nothing he does that's good is ever going to be good enough and he has to go to hell because of his sexuality, which he tried, believe me, he tried not to be gay. He married a woman, he had 2 kids, he did everything he was supposed to, and he's like, I'm not straight, I'm gay. In fact, his wife said, hey, I got a dude to set you up with because you're not straight.
Wow.
And so that kind of like opened the door for me, and I went, oh, well, there's other people out there, and it's about love and connectivity, and that started my personal path. You had a similar story with revelation that you had. Share with the audience your journey through that.
It's hard, I think, for all of us to see ourselves as oppressed. So
yeah, when you're in the middle of it, you think, well, this is normal. I'm just fine.
This is normal life. I don't know anything else, right? Like, you don't know you're a slave until you're not a slave. For me, the inequality, it really like resonates. I am, everybody plays or nobody plays. Yeah. I very much like things should be fair, but you have an opportunity, all of the things. And Mormons used to not allow Black people full access to Mormon rights, right? Mm-hmm. So Mormon men couldn't have the priesthood if they were Black. Couldn't go to the temple. Mormon women couldn't go to the temple either. So they were also, and you were literally like holding back salvation. And the year they changed that rule was it was like a month before I was born. And so growing up, I'm like, that is just such a blatant inequality. It's a good thing that changed before I was born. Like furious. God went from being racist to not being racist. Yeah. Okay, I can be okay with this. And then
God changed his mind. Yeah,
God changed his mind. 1978, God changed his mind about gay people.
Yeah.
Or
Black people.
Black people. Mm-hmm. He's going to change his mind about gay people here any day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when it costs too much money.
Yeah. It comes down to the finances.
The finances and homosexuality in general is not on my radar. Mm-hmm. I went to high school in Utah. I was in the 80s and the 90s. Yep. Like, it was like this thing. Like, I think I watched the film Philadelphia at some point, but that was probably my only experience. Yep. And with anything even remotely, and
you felt progressive just by observing the movie, yeah. Right,
I probably felt guilty, actually.
Probably.
Because I felt compassion, and because Tom Hanks, and how can you not, right? Yeah. But then, it was 2002, I was living in Las Vegas. We were pulled into this meeting at church, and it was every adult in the entire ward congregation was pulled into this meeting. And they basically told us we had a very important vote coming up on the ballot. It was question 2, and it was to put on the Nevada ballot that Nevada only recognizes marriage as being between a man and a woman. Until that point, it had never occurred to me that gay people would want to get married. That was even a question. It wasn't even a thought. Like nothing had, and I'm like 24 at the time, been married for like 5 years, and I'm pregnant with my second kid, kind of a thing, only because we're, anyway, that's a whole Mormon thing. But, and I was like, I lived in this insulated little world that had never occurred to me that this was something that somebody might want, let alone occurred to me that I should stop them from having it, that it mattered, I guess. But then, they have beaming in from Salt Lake, these general authorities telling us how desperate the situation is and then there's these propaganda videos that I found out later. That was one of my things too, is propaganda videos where they were telling only parts of the story, because that's how propaganda is done. Yep. And then I was sitting there, I'm like feeling icky. And I'm like, this doesn't feel good. This is like, I don't smoke. I feel like smoking, God doesn't want us to smoke. I feel like it's bad, right? Yeah. We don't legislate that people can't smoke. Same with alcohol, same with like all of these things. Like, and then they had a woman come up to the stage, and they had called her to represent this political movement. It was a religious calling to represent the political movement, which is a whole other thing, to be the representative for our stake in our region to make this referendum happen. And she was a woman that I greatly respected, who I looked up to and adored. She was in her probably late 40s. And she was powerful and strong and smart and all of the things. Like, if there is a powerful woman in Mormondom, she was one of them who could lead but still be a good Mormon, kind of thing. And she's like, when they called me to do this, it was really hard for me. And so I immediately was like, oh, good, it was hard for her too. Yeah. And she's like, and I went home and I fasted and I prayed and I learned, and I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's going to be hard, and we're going to be ridiculed, but we're called to stand for God, kind of a thing. And so the
martyr complex. Yep.
Right.
We're victims.
Yeah. And so I did. I pushed my let everybody plays or nobody plays aside. And I followed that. Fast forward to 2008, and I'd moved to Utah, and I went from being very I was middle of the road politically in Vegas, and probably leaning conservative. And then I moved to Utah, and I felt like I'd grown and progressed since then too. And I kind of come to this place where I'm like, well, we can like politically disagree, but morally agree. So politically, I can say, like, I can vote against this.
Yeah.
But morally, I think that it's really not the best idea. But I'm not going to force my morality on other people politically. And the church actually came out and said you could do that, which is the only reason I felt
That's
it.
nice.
Which is like this crazy thing,
Yeah.
right? Like, I only disagree because it's allowed to disagree. But moving to Utah, I was all of a sudden this crazy, crazy liberal. And my politics hadn't changed that much.
Yeah.
And my neighborhood hated me because I was not very good at being quiet about it either. And so, but then that was the year of Prop 8. Fast forward like 2 years, 2 years after that, and I was still very, very Mormon. I was it's one of those like setups for a joke, like how Mormon were you, right?
Yeah.
I was so Mormon that I was like, twice a year there are conferences where the people who we believe are next to be prophet, or Mormons believe, next to speak to God, for God, on behalf of God. These people are speaking, these men are speaking to the entire congregation, the entire world, and they're telling us the things we need in order to be better people and humans over the next 6 months.
And that's the authority figure, some guy in a suit behind a podium doing his thing.
Right. And so this man spoke, and he was literally like next in line to be prophet, next in line to be the spokesperson for God on earth. And I was so Mormon.
The prophet is a Pope-esque type of character then. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, the prophet is like the Pope. He speaks to God on behalf of the world. And then, so this guy, if the prophet dies, he was next if he outlived him. And he didn't, thankfully, because bad dude. But I'm like, so Mormon, I'm sewing a dress for my daughter's baptism the next week. And I was like, and so he gets up to speak, and I'm sewing and I'm listening, and he's like, tells a story about this kitten that wanders into a kindergarten classroom, and they're like, oh, is it a boy kitty or a girl kitty? And the kids are like, everybody chuckles because it's so hilarious to talk about genitalia, even if you're Mormon, I guess. And then one of the kids raises his hand. He's like, oh, I know how we can tell. He's like, we can vote on it. And this man in his like late 80s, early 90s is like, people think you can vote on sexuality. We know that sexuality is innate within humans. And God made us male and female, and we have roles to fill. And he's like, and God wouldn't make you some way that you are not.
Wow.
And he loves you. And he's like, God loves you too much to do that to you.
Ugh.
And I was like,
so you're the problem, not God. If you're,
And that was the thing. I was like,
yeah.
This was a time like the It Gets Better campaign that Adam Savage launched, which was brilliant work.
It gets better.
It gets better because like all these teenage kids are killing themselves.
Yeah.
All these gay kids. And so these celebrities are telling their story and saying how much better life gets. When you grow up, just get through the high school years, the junior high school hell, and just make it through. And here's this man who, like, I just start sobbing.
Yeah.
You are literally telling these kids that it's such a struggle. Like, you're telling them that God doesn't love them.
Yeah.
That's what they're hearing you say.
Yep.
Either they're so wrong or God doesn't love them.
Yeah.
And I'm just sobbing because I'm like, how many kids are going to kill themselves because of this?
Yeah.
How many parents are going to not love their kids because their kid's gay and their parents are listening? Like, and I'm just like, he's wrong. I just know he's wrong. And I really struggled with it. And my second daughter was getting baptized the next weekend, and my family come into town, and I was just really struggling. And I had a long conversation with my brother-in-law, who I love and respect and adore, and who's now an ex-mormon. And he was the most righteous of all of my brother-in-laws, and the one that I'm like, if my husband could be a little bit more righteous, it'd be awesome.
Nice. You'd be more like that guy.
Kind of, yeah. And then we had a long conversation. I was telling him how much I was struggling with this, and it was really hard for me. And he told me, he's like, you don't speak for God. This man speaks for God. You need to get your thoughts and your feelings aligned with what he says, not the other way around.
Yeah, whatever you feel on the inside, that intuition is wrong.
It's wrong.
Somebody else who's outside of you is going to tell you how you're supposed to think.
And has the authority to do so. And you should be grateful for it. And so I was like, just devastated. And I knew he was right at the time.
Yeah.
And I needed to get my testimony back and all those things. But the next week, what they do is they release the transcripts of the talks and the videos of the talks, so you can go back and search them and use them for church lessons and stuff. And the talk, the transcription came out, and I it's like, maybe I just need to read it again. Maybe I was like...
So you're scrolling through pages online or something to look at this thing.
Yeah, and the words were changed.
Oh.
Yeah, they softened it.
Huh.
It's still wrong, but they made it sound not so nasty.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe I just heard him wrong. So I went back and watched the tape and read along. And they changed the words. And they didn't change the video, which they've done in the past too, where they've retaped videos. But
wow.
Yeah. Ironically, 1984 is the first one they have evidence of. So it's just like that George Orwell thing, memory hole.
Wow. Yeah.
Anyway, but they went back and they changed it and they softened it. And I was like, and it was just so hard for me because I was like, okay, so this man who's supposed to speak for God, I'm assuming prayed about what he's going to talk about, thought about it, wrote it down, probably edited it and revised a few times. Susie. And practiced it, rehearsed it, and delivered it in front of millions of people. And didn't know it was wrong until the PR team said it was wrong.
Yeah.
Until Susan and PR came through and it was like, not a good idea, right?
Yeah.
And then, but I'm just nobody. And I knew it was wrong the instant I heard it.
Mm-hmm. You could feel that. You could feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew the instant I heard it was wrong. So who is a prophet? Who speaks for God? And that led me down this rabbit hole of trying to strengthen my testimony. I'm going to start by studying prophets. Susie.
And so then you're making your dress for your daughter. She's got this, it was a ceremony or was it?
Baptism.
It was a baptism.
Yeah.
So you've got to write something in her book or something? Tell me that.
Yeah. So we have a tradition in our family that we, when a kid got baptized, because all the family comes and it's a big deal and all of the things, we get a journal and then everybody that comes to the baptism writes their testimony in the journal. And it's, I know the church is true. I know that Joseph Smith was a prophet.
Oh, it's reinforcing the tribe.
Oh, yeah.
Stay in the tribe. It's true. I want to reinforce that.
Yeah, it's the bearing of testimonies. It's a very important part of Mormonism and Mormon culture.
So it validates that belief system.
It reinforces, and then you think everybody else believes like they should, so you should also believe, because if you don't believe, then, who's the messed up one?
Keep the family together.
Yeah. Yep, no empty chairs in heaven. Yeah,
wow.
and I couldn't do it. I couldn't write it down, and my ex-husband, we were married at the time, he was like, I know that you didn't write your testimony in there. You have.
He's looking through going, Ma didn't write something for the kid,
Because we'd been fighting about this talk for a week at this point. And he knew I was upset about it and he was tired of talking about it. And and I was like, he was like, I know, he's like, you have to, or she's going to know. She's going to know that you didn't. And I was like, I can't do it yet. I have to, I can't write what I don't believe. And I'm really struggling. And so he, so I didn't. And I went on this journey to try and regain my testimony of prophets. So you decided to dive in and study harder and try to... Because I am the problem.
Figure it out. Yeah, because there's something wrong with you. Everybody else is correct. And you're like, well, I've got this issue. It's my fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus the stakes are high. Literally every important person in my life is Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
And every important relationship.
Yeah.
I would lose my marriage, my family, my children.
Yeah, your entire support network of all of your friends.
Yeah. And I did.
Yeah.
That's the thing. At the end of the day, I was talking about this with a friend earlier today. There's people that I was best friends with that I talked to on a daily basis. That the first time I said something on Facebook negative about one of the prophets, she sent me a message. Said, I cannot be around you. You have an evil spirit. If you ever decide to come back to church, let me know. And unfriended me, blocked my phone number, would not answer the door when I showed up at her house.
Wow.
Serious. And this is a woman who, I had keys to her house.
Yeah.
I watched her children. She watched my children. We lived down the street from each other. She was a friend that I had for several years that I talked to daily.
Yep.
And, but I was out group now.
Yep.
And I was dangerous.
Yep. You're subverting the mindset of all of us in the tribe. Now you've left the tribe and you're going to woo us away. And so we must hunker down and constrict even more. Yeah.
And I'm no longer safe.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. And so that's why I was like, okay, I'm going to learn all I can about prophets and regain my testimony of prophets. And so, and I'm very nerdy. I love to read. I love to study. I love to learn new things. And so that's the approach I took, was like, it's rather than a spiritual approach, it was an academic approach.
Yeah.
But I believed I was studying righteousness, right? And so, I started with Joseph Smith, and I didn't get much farther because once you really learn about him, it's obvious he's not of God. And then the next question is, well, who is of God? And the next question is there a God? And there's that whole rabbit hole.
You start unraveling the sweater thread by thread.
You unravel it all. And then and I did a lot of therapy as I went through this process. And I say that casually, but I feel like it's really important that people hear that.
Yeah, you found people to talk to. And did you find community?
I did. So my therapist was really, really helpful in helping me rebuild. She's like, you've unraveled all of this. You've torn your house to the ground. You have to build it back up again.
That's good.
Brick by brick, door by door, window by window. You lay out the floor plan. You decide the foundation. What is important to you, and you build. She's like, you can't just tear this down and leave a gaping hole. You can't do it. You have to build something else up after it, which was fantastic. It's led to a lot of personal pursuits and different interesting things. But I did. My family, it was a real struggle with my family. 7 years later, I have my immediate family, a really good relationship with pretty much all of them. My ex-husband's family, not so much, but that was other things too. And it was before the divorce, actually. But my ex-husband left the church. He left the church and we got divorced several years later, actually. There's huge communities of ex-Mormons, which is interesting. And when you live in Utah, it's like you're one or the other. It's not true. It's not that kind of polarity, but it feels like it. And the Never Mormons don't quite understand. And so processing through all of that, I immediately found a group in Davis County, which is where I lived in Utah. And I remember going to my first ex-Mormon event. So I was on an online bulletin board forum, because this is, the 90s. And or the 2000s, I guess. It feels like a long time ago.
Sure, yeah.
But I was in these groups that I'd been in for a long time. One of them was a baby center, LDS moms chat room board, right?
Yeah.
So there are all these other Mormon moms, and we were talking about all the different things you talk about. And it was a community that when you have 4 little kids that are like 7 and under, and the youngest 3 are like 2.5, 1.5, and 1, or newborn, like,
because you're under pressure to pump them out, man. You got work to do,
and you can't go anywhere. Like, you're just trapped. And so it's like, these online networks. Anyway, I had started reaching out to other different things. And I knew that there were other apostates on the board that had left. And anyway, I found out about this brunch that was happening, and I was not quite sure what I was going and where I was going yet. I had not decided to leave the church, and I wasn't sure where my testimony was, actually. But it was about 6 weeks after studying, and I went to this brunch, and there were about 20 women there, and there was coffee and tea.
That's the best.
And it was terrifying. And I was like, but became this point where they...
See, Christians love their coffee. Yeah, that's one thing we didn't have a problem with.
Yeah, Mormons do not do coffee or tea.
Because it has caffeine, which is a stimulant, and that's a drug. It might as well be heroin. We're all going to get hooked.
It's actually not the caffeine thing.
What is it?
Because you can drink Coke and it's fine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's just... It's a whole long story.
Okay, never mind.
It's a long story. It's a funny story, but it's a long story. But
episode 2.
But I went to this thing, and I was like, and everybody went around the room and like kind of like, I'm so and so, and it almost like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, except it was like, I'm this person, and this is where I'm at with the church, and this is why I left. And as these women are going around the room, I'm hearing these stories, and they're all really relatable, and they seem like great people. And then this one girl says, my name is Kate. And she's like, I've been struggling for a while. And she's like, I don't consider myself Mormon, but I haven't told my husband yet. And my kids don't know. And like, she's like living on the down low. And I'm like, I know her. I know you. And I recognized her, and I knew her name. And it turns out she was on this Mormon mom bulletin board with me. And I was like, when it was my turn, I'm like, I'm Amber, and I don't know why I'm here yet, but I feel good. For the first time in months, I feel good, and I feel like I'm amongst friends, and I can trust you. And I'm like, and I'm pretty sure I know Kate. And she's like freaking out.
She turned red, and she ran out.
She's on the down low. Like, she's like, nobody's supposed to know these things, and you know who I am, and now I've been identified. And I was anyway. It turns out, and so it was like, but it was meeting these women who were in the same place as me. Because at the time, like, you're so insulated, you feel like you're the only one going through this.
Yes.
You're the only, and that's how they want you to feel.
Yes.
Because somebody stops going to church and you stop talking to them.
You think you're the only one.
And you never ask.
No.
You never ask why they don't, because you don't, it's either sin or laziness or...
It's always the problem with you.
Yeah. Or the devil has a hold of your soul.
Yes. Or the devil is controlling. Yes.
Yeah. And so, like, the first week I didn't go to church, too. Like, you have this thing called...
Did you fake illness or anything, or just not go?
No. So I was going to church. So I'd injured my knee the beginning of...
So you had an excuse then.
Well, and I was actually still going. So I injured my knee the beginning of 2011. And I was like, well, this is God telling me I really need to buckle down and work my testimony. Because it'd been about a month since my whole, like, crisis. And I kind of put it aside. But I'm like, I'm going to do this. But then life gets busy. I had 6 weeks where I couldn't put any pressure on my knee. So I couldn't cook, I couldn't clean, I couldn't run around, I was just stuck. And I read thousands and thousands of pages of information and listened to podcasts and mostly from LDS sources even. And I normally was I taught nursery, which is like the 18-month to 3-year-old kid class.
Bless your heart.
And I loved it. I loved it. I loved the kids. I loved I had a couple friends I taught with. I loved it so much. But I hadn't been to adult classes in years. And so I'm like, well, this is good. I need to be in adult classes. I need to learn these things. Like, maybe there's something I'm missing, kind of a thing. And so I was going to adult classes for 6 weeks. And then the last week I went, my like 7th, I guess it was the 7th Sunday in February of 2011. My brace was off my knee. I can go back to nursery. And by then I'm like, the church isn't true. I'm done. And I go back to nursery and I was like, I'm just going to fake it because everything's at risk. Everything's at stake.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't have to go to adult classes. I'm teaching nursery.
Yep.
I go and I play with kids. I have snacks and we sing songs. I mean, these are 3-year-olds, or the oldest as they are. And we sing this song called Follow the Prophet.
Yeah.
And my co-leader, who I love and adore, and she's still one of my favorite humans, and she did not stop being my friend, had made these little homemade instruments. So the kids are marching in a circle, pounding on these little oatmeal drums and tambourines and waving wands. And we're marching in a circle singing just the chorus of this song. And just the chorus is like, and I'm a really bad singer, but I'm going to sing it anyway. Follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, don't go astray. Follow the prophet. And it's like this chant. Follow the prophet, he knows the way. And I'm like, we are marching in circles and singing a song. We are a cult.
Wow.
We are a cult.
Did they have their arms out like this?
No, they're beating drums and waving tambourines. And this is fun, happy thing. And I'm like having an anxiety attack and a panic attack. And I'm like, I am like corrupting these children that not think for themselves and make bad decisions and all of these things. And and I came home from church and I was mad. I was so mad. And my husband was like, I would rather you not go to church than come home this mad. And it hadn't occurred to me that was an option.
Oh, so you're saying I don't have to go to church.
And it took me about 3 days to come back and go, I'm just going to not go to church anymore.
Yeah.
I think I'm done. Yeah. That did not go the way he wanted it to go. He wanted me to change my attitude.
Well, of course, it was simply a bad attitude. You needed to change it.
Well, that's how you sin as a Mormon, is you have a bad attitude. But the first week I didn't go to church, they do a thing called visiting teaching. So all of the women are assigned a partner, and you're assigned 3 or 4 other women in the ward, and every month you're to check on them. Keep you in the cult, keep you in the church, keep you all together. And you have a lesson you're assigned to give. So you go to their house and you give them a lesson, you visit, and in theory, there are some great things. You can meet new people. You have a tribe. You have people that are looking out for you, like all of these things, right? In reality, it's checking up on and it's watching and it's all of the things. And if they're not going to church, you remind them they should be going to church. So one of my people that I visit taught, her name was Lindsay, and she had stopped going to church 4 or 5 months prior. She wasn't real consistent before then, but her husband and her kids kept coming. And so we'd go and we'd chat and we'd kind of give her a lesson and she'd smile and nod and we'd leave cookies and go on our way. I went to her house the first day I didn't go to church, during church. And I went down there and knocked on her door and she answers the door and she's like, Amber? I'm like, I need to know why you're not going to church. And she's like white, like pale, like she just, all of the color drains from her face. And she's like, just looks panicked. I'm like, I just want to see if it's the same reasons why I don't want to go to church anymore. And she was like, oh, come on in.
Oh,
And it was
so
like,
good.
I picked out little tribes, right?
Yeah.
So I had my friend Kate and Lindsay, and then there was a group called Community After Leaving Mormonism, so Calm.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and and so I found them, and I went to I went to this Easter event they had. My poor friend Mike, he ran the group at the time, and I was just angry.
Mm-hmm.
I was so angry.
Yeah, you feel betrayed, you feel lied, you feel tricked. Yeah.
All of the things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and mostly it's because like you've been told all these stories and you think you know everything there is to know, and then you do this research and you're like, oh my God, there's like 10,000 layers deeper that nobody tells me anything about. I feel like an idiot, which is my worst feeling, is feeling like an idiot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, rage. And he jokes about it. We're still friends, and he jokes about it now. Like stopped at his house, stayed at his house for a couple days last winter on our trip. He lives in Portland now, and he's like, "You're just so calm now." He's like, "Remember that first time in our backyard, and you're just like so mad, you were so angry." He's like, "It's so funny, like you really mellow it out." And I'm like, "Just get me riled up about something else." And I'm always like, right here with passion, but it was just like having people hear me.
Yeah.
And so you build those communities, and the people, it's kind of like when you go through hard times with people, you build that bond, right?
Yep.
And so the friends I made in that first year that were also in the same place they're still to this day some of my closest
Solidarity,
friends.
man.
Solidarity.
Yeah, so
and,
you can feel how I feel because we've gone through this same journey together.
Right.
Yeah.
And it exists. And that's, I think, for people who are in the same place, like find a tribe, go to therapy.
Yeah. No,
reframe your story. Yeah.
That's really good because there are people that they're like, I don't know. I stumbled across this show and I saw some keywords that popped up and I'm hearing this story and your words are resonating. There's people that need to know you're okay. You're okay.
You're
Guess
not
what?
the problem.
You're all going to be fine.
Right.
You're not the problem. That's right. And if you have questions, what helped me was it's a belief system. Oh, you mean it's not abject moral truth and this is the only way? No, it's a belief system. And there's many belief systems.
And that was one of the things too, is that your world feels so small when you're in this group and everybody you know is like this and you're the only one who doesn't think this way and you feel so out there and like left out and there's everybody else is bad. So I've been taught my whole life. And then to open up your mind and be like, oh, the world is full of beautiful people.
Yes.
And most of them are not Mormon.
So when you deconstruct from a religious context, the world gets nicer, it gets more beautiful, it gets safer. It's not everything's out to get you. You don't have this constant anxiety. You don't have fear. You get to look. No, there's
not religious fear.
No, there's still things. I mean, there's still things that I'm not saying we've arrived and we're at this point of enlightenment, but I had this constant fear of not, what if I didn't pick right or what would happen? I mean, you're talking about eternal stakes here. When you let go of that paradigm, that belief system, you're then given the opportunity to look at every single person as someone that's a human that you can connect with and you can love. It makes the world such a better place. There's no more us and them and they're the other. It's now we're all in this together. Yeah,
we're all human.
Yeah.
We have that in common. And that's the only thing we have to have in common. And that's been, I think, one of my biggest things is like, not only so many people exist and so many humans to connect with, but there's so many experiences I'm allowed to have. I'm allowed to think about. I'm allowed to make my own choices about. Like, it's not like, and sometimes too, that's another trap that people can fall, at least Mormons and ex-Mormons fall into. You leave the church, you're like, well, the church said this is my answer. So it's from one end to the other. And then you're still letting the church make all of your decisions because you're just doing the opposite of what they say. But instead it's like, I can think about this and I can say, well, I think I fall here on this. Or here on this, or I don't, whatever choice you want to make. And it's, I think that's been the most, has relieved my anxiety the most. Like as a parent, when your one job is make sure all your children grow up to be good Mormons.
Constant anxiety there. I had that with my kids. I'm like, oh, what if they don't get it? Yeah,
constant anxiety. Am I doing enough? Am I good enough? Am I I can't fail them because that's their eternal salvation and then it's my fault and all of those things. And now it's like my worry for my kids is that they grow up to be kind and compassionate and that they love their lives and that they feel open to ask questions and like all of those things that you get to do. And there's no more wrong answers. Like
You get to raise happy, healthy humans.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that kind of brings it back around. Do I regret my upbringing in my childhood? It's hard to think what you would change because then it changes everything after it, right? It's the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. But it's, I don't regret the way I was raised. I do think that I would be a healthier adult if I were raised how I'm raising my kids.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have your story to tell.
Right. I wouldn't have my story. And they wouldn't have their story.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to hold what you have and be grateful for it, but not let it constrict you from going forward from there.
Yeah.
I would think.
Now, as we're rounding third, heading towards home, I want to make sure I give an opportunity to let people know how awesome Amber Pechin is. So you've got a business, you've got Amplitude Media, and you're a writer, and you're working on some stuff. Tell us about some of the stuff you're doing.
Right. So, I own a business. I'm a co-owner. I have a partner that we run it's a creative marketing agency, but I'm essentially at heart, we're writers. We tell stories. So we take all the letters and form them into words and form those words into sentences that tell great stories for businesses. That's what we do.
I love it.
And Susan is head of HR.
That's
She's
good.
Yeah.
She's pretty relaxed. She's a pretty chill HR director.
She really is, as long as you don't get out of line. If you get out of line, she'll yell at you. Yeah, Susan has an email address. If you have a bad day, she'll, having a rough day, we like to say, you can email Susan. She'll mail you back.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She sends out a newsletter every month. But
it's got nothing but pause in it. But.
Yeah, there's a lot of dog puns. And I don't apologize for them at all.
That is awesome.
So, but we tell stories for businesses. We write words for websites, for social media. We do ghostwriting for books. But then I also have 2 books that are coming out. One is a parenting book. It's called Strategic Neglect. It's the art of #winning at parenting.
That's so good.
And it's stories about, it's essentially, it's about a series of essays about stories from my raising of my kids. I feel like my mom did a really good job of giving us all the physical tools we needed to be competent, functioning adults, but we didn't get a lot of the emotional tools. And so it's a bunch of stories that are fun and funny in theory, about like how I'm trying to very specifically and directly give my kids tools to communicate and to deal with emotional fallout in their lives and things like that. Kind of with training wheels, and then take the training wheels off and help them grow. But it's all based on the rules of our family. Yeah, so
that's good.
Yeah, and then I have a children's book called The People Next Door. It's about a little girl named Zoe who lives in a very weird family of zombies, and they move and they end up moving to a people neighborhood, and it's all about being different in a neighborhood full of people other different than you and how you overcome it. So it's like Bernstein Bears, but with zombies.
Yeah,
little moral lessons.
That is awesome. I love that. I love that. It's very conscious.
Yeah, it's I feel like if you're not loving what you're doing something wrong. And so if you should change it. Yeah. And I feel like life should be fun and funny, and so it's also funny.
Well, you're a stand-up comic. You've done work. I mean, that to me is the bravest thing you can do. You walk onto a stage. Yeah, it's public speaking. You grab a microphone and everybody stop and go and entertain me, make me laugh. I mean, that's very brave of you.
So it's one of those things where it's like, it's not really brave as much as it's shameless. It's I've kind of taken a hiatus this year. I've only done 2 shows in 2017. So
well, if you've ever done one show, that's respect right there.
There was a while I was doing 4 or 5 shows a week, but life changes and patterns, all the things. But I loved it. I still love it. And I had my favorite is my first open mic. I pacing nervously backstage, and I'm kind of like. And I'm kind of like this anyway. Yeah. And so I'm like trying to remember my set and all of these things. And there's this old grizzled comedian, and he's like, hey, have you been in this room before? And I'm like, no, this is my first night. And he's like, oh, well, okay. And he like puts both of his hands on my shoulder, and he leans in really close, and I can smell his breath. I can smell the pot. I can smell the whiskey, I can smell the cigarettes. And he leans in real close, and he's like, I've done a lot of drugs in my life. And he just stares at me right in my eyes. And he's like, here. And I'm like, and he's probably in his 60s. And I'm like, okay. And he, for like full stop, for like 45 seconds.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, I don't know if this is confession time. I have no idea. He's like, there is no high you will feel like when you get off that stage tonight. You will chase that high for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, okay.
So there was a moral.
He's like, I'm saying don't do drugs. And I'm like, thank you, Nancy Reagan. Like, I don't know what to do with that. And but it was right.
Yeah.
Like, I went up there and killed it. And that feeling is so different than any other feeling I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And it's does become addictive.
Yeah.
And you do chase it. And then you learn like how bad failure feels,
Yeah.
which is, one of the reasons.
Have you had an experience of bombing?
Oh, more than one,
Oh.
multiple. I've some stories, man. But that's so as a Mormon, and it's a Mormon untying thing is why I got into comedy, actually.
Yep.
It's a couple different layers, but it's like, you cannot fail as a Mormon. You're constantly failing, and you're constantly fearing failure, and it's terrifying to mess up. And then to admit that you messed up is even worse. Messing up where other people see you mess up is even a bigger thing. And so it was one of those things where I'm like, I am not going to succeed every time I do this. And there's professional reasons why I was doing it too, get better at public speaking, all the things. But I was like,
sure, yeah.
I need to learn how to fail better and not be as afraid of failing. And that was one of the reasons why I did comedy. But it was also my life until this point had been so clean and so pure and so white and Mormon that I didn't have much experience with people outside of that paradigm. Like, I lived in Las Vegas and I knew my neighbors and those kind of things. And I moved to Utah, and then I moved to Phoenix. And I didn't start doing comedy until I moved to Phoenix, and I didn't know anybody. So it was a way to make friends too, and get to know people. And comics are a rough bunch. And I'm this sweet, innocent, naive. I didn't think I was. I was like, I've been an ex-Mormon by like 3 years. By then I was so tough.
Oh, that's awesome.
And but it was like this experience of like, how many people can I meet that have different experiences? How many different stories can I hear? Is really kind of where I was going with it. How can I broaden my perspective and get to know more people, but then also learn to fail at the same time, learn from other people and hear their stories. So it's kind of like this whole complex thing I was doing. And it was also, I was chasing that high. At the end of the day, that's what I was chasing. But I did. But then I did improv for a while, and I loved it. Live storytelling, love it. And they're all three very different, but very similar mediums. And the feeling is different, and the response is different. But I know people say that's brave, but it's not brave when you crave it. It's just part of what you do. There are things that I think that are a lot braver that I haven't done yet. But I'm more scared to do. But
that's good.
Yeah.
Before we end, do you have a website, something that people can go to and find your stuff? Yeah.
So amplitude.media is the website. I'm on there. My email's on there. Susan's email's on there.
You can contact Susan.
If you want to talk to Susan, she's ready to listen.
I imagine once people get to know the two of you, she gets more email. Is that right?
It's pretty much how it works. Yeah. And we call it P-mail because it's
nice. Of course
puppy,
you do.
It's puppy mail, right? But and I, if will be a page you can figure out how to order books or pre-order books depending on which book you want to order and what stage we're in at that point. Or if you want to talk about words, we can talk about words. But if you just want me to talk to you about changing religions and have a conversation, I feel honored when people reach out to be welcomed into a really painful part of their life and have that conversation. And there were a lot of people who were there for me when I was in that place. And so it's like one of those paying forward good humanity kind of things.
Awesome.
So
I like to end the show with the guest saying, if you don't listen to anything else, this is the one thing I want you to take away. So tell people, what is that one thing you want people to know about you and what you are doing?
You are not the problem. That you are worthy of being loved. Any God that doesn't love you isn't a God you should worship. And if you're struggling, reach out. Find a community, find a therapist. Yeah, find your people. Is really what, and your people will carry you through. But live your truth.
That's awesome.
So.
Awesome. Amber Pechin, thank you so much for being here. It's a blast, and I can't wait to see what happens next on your journey as you are exploring the human journey.
Thank you. Me too.
I'm David Marsh, and you've been watching Exploring the Human Journey on YouTube as a video and listening as a podcast. If you would like to help continue the conversation, please consider supporting us by visiting patreon.com, where you can support us on a monthly basis and get extra bonus content. For as little as $1 a month, you can make this show sustainable and help continue spiritual consciousness. You can also help by following us on Facebook and Instagram. For more information about the show, find us online at exploringthehumanjourney.com.